Hey, welcome to our explainer. Today we are diving deep into one of the most challenging ethical topics in all of science, animal research. It's a subject where strong emotions and core principles really clash. Now, my goal here isn't to tell you what to think. It's to give you the tools to unpack all the arguments so you can form your own informed opinion. Let's get right into it.
So, at the very heart of this whole thing is this fundamental tension. And what makes it so incredibly difficult is that it's not a simple case of good versus evil. It's really a conflict between two things that most of us would agree are good: our drive to cure disease and end human suffering, and our moral responsibility to treat animals with compassion. How we navigate that conflict, well, that's what we're going to explore today.
Okay, so before we can even get into the ethics, the should we part, we have to start with a more basic question. Why do we even use animals for research in the first place? You really have to understand the scientific reasoning behind it to get a grip on the whole debate.
Take a look at this. This image really gets to a core idea in biology. You're seeing the brains of a few different species here: a rat, a cat, a monkey, and a human. Now, obviously they're different sizes, but look at the basic layout. See how they all have a cerebrum, a cerebellum, and a brainstem? That fundamental similarity is absolutely key. It means scientists can study the nervous system of a simpler animal to uncover principles that apply to our own incredibly complex brains. So building on that idea, you can boil down the why into four main reasons. First, just like we saw, animals can act as simpler models for us to understand complex biology. Second, sometimes it's about pure curiosity, just wanting to understand animal behavior and the natural world. Third, it helps us piece together the puzzle of evolution and where we fit in. And finally, and this one is a really big deal, there are some experiments that are vital for medical progress but would be completely and totally unethical to ever perform on people.
All right, so that's the why. Now we pivot to the much tougher question: should we? And this is where we get to the core ethical battle, which is usually broken down into two very different ways of thinking.
So on one side, you have what's known as the minimalist position. These folks generally agree that some research is acceptable, but, and this is a huge but, it has to be strictly regulated. The core idea is a balancing act. The potential good that comes from the research has to be significantly greater than the pain or distress caused to the animal. Then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got the abolitionist position. Their argument is straightforward. Animals have the same rights as people, period. So for them, there's no compromise. All animal research has to stop. This quote, wow, it really captures the absolute conviction of the abolitionist viewpoint, doesn't it? There's no gray area there. It shows that from this perspective, any use of an animal in a lab setting, no matter how great the potential benefit for humanity, is just fundamentally wrong.
So you've got these two opposing poles. How does society actually function? Well, in the United States and many other places, the real-world answer is a system of compromise and heavy regulation that's built on a very specific ethical framework.
And that framework is known as the 3 Rs. This is the bedrock of modern animal research ethics. First up is replacement. If you can use a non-animal method, like a computer model or a cell culture, you have to. Second is reduction. If you absolutely must use animals, you are legally and ethically required to use the smallest number possible to still get scientifically valid results. And third, refinement. You must change your procedures in any way you can to minimize pain and stress for the animals involved.
But you know, principles are just words on paper without someone to enforce them, right? In the US, that's the job of the IACUC, or the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. Any place doing animal research with federal funds has to have one. And these committees aren't just a bunch of scientists. They have to include a veterinarian and, this is super important, at least one person from the local community who has no ties to the institution. They review every single research proposal to make sure those 3 Rs are being followed to the letter.
Okay, so we have the principles. We have the oversight committee. Sounds good, right? But applying these ideas in the real world, that's where it gets incredibly complicated. Let's walk through a couple of real-world dilemmas. And as we do, I want you to really think, what would you decide?
Okay, here's our first one. Imagine an invasive fox species is absolutely devastating a native endangered bird population. A conservation plan is proposed to kill the foxes to save the birds from extinction. This is a tough one, right? It pits the value of an entire species against the lives of individual animals. There's no clean, easy answer here. What's the right call?
And for our second case study, this one hits even closer to home for a lot of people. We can take heart valves from pigs and transplant them into humans, literally saving their lives. So here, the benefit to people is direct. It's life-saving, it's undeniable.
Does that clear human benefit automatically justify raising and using pigs for this reason? This is that classic minimalist dilemma in action, weighing a huge benefit against a huge cost.
These case studies really show that even with a solid framework, like the 3 Rs, there are just no simple push-button answers. These regulations are basically our society's current best attempt at finding a workable compromise. But the ethical conversation itself, it's always changing.
So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Our current legal and ethical standard is a middle path. It tries to carve out a space between the abolitionists' demand for zero research and a totally unregulated anything-goes approach. It's a system that acknowledges the deep ethical problems while still permitting research that's considered essential for human and animal health.
And that brings us to the future, and it brings us back to you. Because as technology gets better and better, as things like computer modeling and organs on a chip become more sophisticated, that ethical math is going to change. The line of what we consider necessary or justifiable research is going to move. This debate isn't some settled chapter in a history book, it's a living, breathing, evolving conversation. And now you're a part of it. So the question is, where will you draw the line?